Tsogo Sun owns Southern Sun Hotels and a number of gaming venues, including Monte Casino, north of Johannesburg. It has a market cap of 23.4 billion rand. Tsogo Sun's key shareholders are Hoskin Consolidated Investments and SAB Miller. Tsogo has a price-to-earnings ratio of 15 and a dividend yield of 3%. Paul, what do you make of Tsogo Sun?
Yeah, so it's emerged historically as the largest of the listed players in our market, and it dominates the Gauteng market because they've got Monte Casino, which is in the north, and they've got Gold Reef City, which is in the south, and Silver Star, which is the one out in the west. The only one they don't have is the one in the east, which is Emperor's Palace, which is part of a delisted group. So, I mean, the backdrop there is, as Daniel said, in the old days, gambling was only something that was allowed in the homelands, for heaven's sakes, you know, the sort of Bantustans. And then they brought it into, you know, the mainstream South Africa, and they had a long licensing process. The only good thing, in my opinion, which came out of that was all the venues, because we know that lots of the, you know, artistic productions happen at these different casinos. But, you know, it's got its particular place in our society, so I suppose one shouldn't be negative. And as you pointed out there, Tsogo Sun has also got a major investment in hotels. That's Southern Suns, and we know that's a good business, quite high margins. It's all down to occupancies. In any event, 20 billion market cap, it's a serious player, it's got good management. You know, going forward, I guess it's going to do whatever the sector does, whatever the consumer does.
And looking at earnings, Daniel sees a 20% increase in earnings for the 6 months to September. Do you see that coming through? And what are the likely drivers for this growth going forward for Tsogo Sun?
So I think in terms of growth drivers going forward, just to pick up on something that Paul said, they are exposed to the hotel industry, and they are exposed across the spectrum. They're not only 4- and 5-star, they've got budget hotels, they've recently gone into Formula One. That's usually more supportive of higher occupancy rates through the cycle. So you've got that supporting earnings as well. They also had, in 2011, they had the new group infrastructure taking on Gold Reef. Their casinos historically did not perform as well as Tsogo Sun. So basically, Tsogo Sun, what I think they will do is go into those casinos and basically re-energize them to the level of Tsogo Sun's casinos and give those casinos a bit of a margin uplift, and that's going to add to the profitability going forward.
Paul, where do you see a kicker for this one?
Well, it's exactly what Daniel is saying there. In other words, Gold Reef was the old Gold Reef, which just basically had that. You know, the one where the Apartheid Museum is and the Gold Reef Fun Park and so on. Now what they've done is they've reversed these other assets in exchange for shares. So what's going to emerge now, and I think the market is sort of getting used to where the earnings profitability is sort of going to be. They had a trading update a few weeks ago, which showed earnings of about 20%. So that's normally what the market does. It sort of works out, okay, we've got all these new shares in issue, and now we've got these new businesses and what the cash flows, blah, blah, blah. So I think that's fine. As I said, myself and Olok looks like a very well-established kind of management player there. Management team looks good. For me, the key issue with this stock is what's going to happen with the shareholding base. Because now you've got SAB Miller, which owns 36% of the shares. And we know they've been doing fantastically well, but their main interest is in beer globally. Then you've got HCI, which is an empowerment-based group, which we're going to talk about later, which I think is very ambitious and probably wants to own all of the shares. So I'm not quite sure how that's going to play out. For you as a minority shareholder, you know for a fact these guys have got, you know, like a solid 60+% shares, which will never trade. Is it an opportunity? Will you be able to benefit from a potential buyout? I'm not sure, and it could also be that that only happens in many years to come.
So would you be getting into a stock like this, Daniel, right now?
So I'd say that I would classify the stock as hot. I'd say it's my preferred pick in the pure gambling sector for some of the reasons I've mentioned. I also think that with SAB getting out of their stock, that could increase the liquidity of the stock, which has been somewhat constrained. So, I mean, you could have the upside of HCR moving more in. You could have the upside of just more trading around the stock. So I'd say it's hot.
So hot for you. Paul, hot or not, Tsogo Sun?
No, I'm going to go with not hot. My sense is that the gambling industry is sort of in decline, and that's because 10 years ago the TV was bad, there wasn't anything to do at home, there wasn't much sport on TV. So what do? You go to the casino and you sit there on the slots and smoke a whole pack of cigarettes while you pull the 1AM bandit the whole night. But my sense is that's not happening anymore. So I know there are people who love to play cards for money, but for me anyway, it's a bit of an antiquated part of our sort of entertainment spectrum. So I'm not going with hot on any of these.
You don't like gaming.
Ah, say.
Period. Okay, so one hot and one not on Tsogo